The sun hadn't even risen over Temecula's warm hills when I closed the gate behind me. In one hand, a small duffel bag. In the other, my bus ticket to San Diego. The backyard was quiet. The giant grill that Kyle insisted I use for his birthday barbecue stood untouched, its lid cold, its coals unlit. Inside, I imagined them waking up slowly. My grown kids, Kyle, Megan, Zachary, rubbing their eyes, expecting the smell of grilled meat and the clinking of tongs, expecting me to have everything prepped, marinated and sizzling by 10 a.m., like I always did. But not this time. I'd left a note, short and sharp. Enjoy your barbecue. The grill is right where you left it, and so are the expectations. That was the first time in 25 years I walked away from something they thought I'd never question. Being their unpaid, invisible servant. That was the day I stopped being their yes woman and started being myself again. Growing up, I was the kind of mother who said yes to everything. Yes to 3 kids. Yes to PTA meetings. Yes to packed lunches, science projects, prom dresses, and last-minute costume emergencies. I stayed even when Tom, my ex-husband, left for a younger woman 12 years ago and never looked back, unless it was to ask for something. After the divorce, I worked part-time at a grocery store and part-time as a home cleaner. It wasn't glamorous, but it put food on the table and kept the lights on in our modest Temecula home. The desert heat would seep through the windows in summer, and I'd work extra shifts to pay for the air conditioning my kids couldn't live without. Children were everything to me. I gave them my time, my sleep, my savings, my weekends, and eventually my sense of self. When they became adults, I thought things would get easier. I imagined quiet weekends, books, a garden, maybe some travel to those coastal towns I'd always dreamed of visiting, but never had time for. But instead of resting, I became their default event planner, cook, babysitter, chauffeur, and emergency backup. "Mom, can you watch Eli this weekend? Dylan and I need some us time," Megan would say, already dropping off my 3-year-old grandson's overnight bag before I could answer. "Mom, I need those cookies you make for the office party tomorrow. Everyone's expecting them." Zachary would text at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday when I had a 6 a.m. cleaning shift the next morning. Last year, when Megan hosted her housewarming, I was told, not asked, to handle all the food. "Mom, you love doing this kind of stuff," she said, while sipping wine and scrolling Instagram as I stood in her kitchen chopping onions, my lower back aching from the 4 houses I'd cleaned that day. Then Zachary asked me to host his casual engagement BBQ because his fiancée didn't want to stress. "You know, how to make the best tri-tip. Just do what you always do," he said, clapping me on the shoulder like I was a reliable old appliance that never malfunctioned. Each time I smiled and nodded. Each time I convinced myself that being needed was the same as being valued. My friend Luann tried to tell me, "Donna, honey, they're walking all over you," she'd say over coffee at her kitchen table. The only place I seem to sit down these days. "When was the last time one of them asked how you were doing?" I'd laugh it off. "They're busy. They've got their own lives." "And what about yours?" she'd counter, her eyes soft with concern. But I didn't have an answer for that. Somewhere along the way, my life had become a series of tasks performed for others, a list of chores checked off, a calendar of events I catered but never truly attended as a guest. There was the Thanksgiving where I cooked for 18 people, including Tom's new wife and her parents, and 8 standing up in the kitchen. There was Kyle's graduation party, where I spent 6 hours making sure everyone's drinks were full, while mine sat untouched. There was Zachary's engagement dinner where I wasn't in a single photo because I was the one taking them all. I didn't notice it happening. The slow erosion of my presence, the way I became the hands that prepared the food, the arms that carried the groceries, the back that cleaned up the mess, but never the person invited to sit, to laugh, to be seen. And then came Kyle's birthday. He sent me a group text on a Wednesday afternoon. "Hey, BBQ at your place. 15 ppl will be there at noon. Bring the Donna magic. No please, no offer to help. No mention of groceries or prep, just an expectation that I'd be the engine powering their fun." When I gently suggested we could do potluck, Megan replied, "You know that's not the same. Everyone loves when you do it all." Tom even texted, "I'll swing by too, haven't had your grilled ribs in ages. Hope you're making enough for leftovers." They loved what I could do, not who I was. The night before, as I stood in front of my fridge, full of marinated meat, sauces I made from scratch, and bowls of salad, I broke down. Not from exhaustion, from clarity. I stared at my reflection in the black window above the sink. The lines around my eyes had deepened. My hair, once a vibrant auburn, now streaked with grey. I never had time to colour. My hands rough from cleaning chemicals and kitchen work. Who was this woman? Where had Donna gone? They weren't cruel. They were conditioned by me. I had trained them to treat me like this. Every yes when I meant no. Every smile when I wanted to cry. Every time I put their needs before mine without a second thought. But I wasn't doing it anymore. Not this time. I dried my tears with the back of my hand and looked at that stranger in the window. "You deserve more," I whispered to her. "You deserve to be seen." And for the first time in decades, she looked back at me and nodded. At 4:45 a.m., I zipped up my bag and slipped out quietly. The sky was still dark, but there was a hint of purple on the horizon, the promise of a new day. I stood on my porch for a moment, keys in hand, feeling the weight of my decision. I left the ribs in the fridge. I left the paper plates and utensils on the kitchen island. I left the grill spotless, untouched. I left behind a lifetime of servitude disguised as tradition. And I took with me something I hadn't carried in years: freedom. The Uber driver was surprised to see someone heading to the bus station so early. "Family emergency?" he asked, eyeing my small bag in the rearview mirror. I considered this for a moment. "No," I said finally. "Family. Clarity." He nodded like he understood, though I doubted he did. How could he know what it felt like to disappear inside your own life? The bus station was nearly empty. A few travelers dozed on hard plastic seats. The smell of industrial cleaner and stale coffee hung in the air. I bought my ticket to San Diego, a city close enough to return from, but far enough to feel like an escape. As I waited, I wrote a letter in my mind to each of my children. To Megan, always so confident and capable at work, yet somehow helpless at home. "I raised you to be strong, not entitled." To Zachary, sensitive and creative, but blind to anyone's struggles but his own. "I taught you empathy, not selective compassion." To Kyle, my youngest, so much like his father in his casual assumption that the world would arrange itself around his needs. "I showed you kindness, not how to take advantage of it." But I didn't write these letters down. They weren't for them. They were for me. A reckoning with how far we'd all strayed from what I'd meant to teach them. The bus ride to San Diego was quiet. I didn't check my phone once. I knew what would be waiting there: calls, angry texts, guilt trips. Let them find the grill cold. Let them realize how little they knew about cooking, organizing, or showing up for each other without me as the glue. Let them learn. I arrived in San Diego as the city was waking up. The marine layer still hung over the coast, but the sun was burning through, promising a beautiful day. I had no plan beyond this moment, and it felt terrifying and exhilarating. I found a small diner near the harbor and sat at a window table. The waitress, Carol, according to her name tag, brought me coffee without me asking. "You look like you could use this," she said with a wink. I ordered a breakfast I'd never make at home. Too indulgent, too time-consuming. French toast with berries and whipped cream. Coffee refilled twice. No rush. No one waiting for me to finish and start serving them. That day, instead of flipping burgers, I had a burger at a seaside diner with my own fork and my own time. I walked along the waterfront, watching families and couples and solo travelers like me. I sat on a bench and listened to street musicians. I browsed in shops without checking the time. And when I finally turned my phone on, 43 missed calls. A group chat explosion of confusion, chaos, and last-minute pizza deliveries. "Where are you?" "Mom, this isn't funny. People are literally hungry. How could you abandon us on Kyle's birthday?" I ignored them. Everyone. For one day, the only person I served was me. I checked into a modest hotel near the beach. Nothing fancy, but it had a balcony with an ocean view and clean sheets I didn't have to wash. I sat out there as the sun set, turning the water to gold and then deep blue. My phone buzzed again. Tom, this time. "What the hell, Donna? The kids are upset. This isn't like you." And that was exactly the point. This wasn't like the Donna they knew, the Donna who would never say no, who would never put herself first, who would never walk away. But it was exactly like the Donna I used to be, the one who knew her worth, the one who was finally coming back to life. I didn't answer him. Instead, I sent a single text to all 3 of my children. "I'm safe. I'm taking some time for myself. I'll be home tomorrow." Then I turned off my phone again. That night I slept better than I had in years. No one calling for water. In the middle of the night. No alarm set for an early cleaning job. No mental list of tasks for tomorrow scrolling through my mind like ticker tape. Just me, the sound of distant waves, and the knowledge that for once I had chosen myself, and it felt like coming home. I returned home the next day, mid-afternoon. The house was eerily quiet. The kitchen, usually my domain, bore the chaotic aftermath of their attempt at self-sufficiency. Burnt aluminum foil in the sink, sauce-crusted plates stacked haphazardly on the counter, a trash bag, overfilled and untied, slumped against the island. The grill on the patio remained pristine, untouched, a monument to their helplessness. I set my bag down and took a deep breath. This mess wasn't mine to clean up. Not anymore. I had just filled the kettle for tea when the front door opened. Kyle walked in, stopping short when he saw me standing in the kitchen. "You're back," he said, his voice a mixture of relief and lingering anger. "I am," I replied simply. He shifted uncomfortably, looking around at the mess as if seeing it for the first time. "We didn't know what to do." "I can see that." Everyone was really confused and hungry. I nodded, waiting for what I knew was coming next. "I had to order 10 pizzas, cost me a fortune." He paused, expectant. This was where I would typically apologize, offer to reimburse him, take the blame. Instead, I asked, "Did you think about cooking the food I left in the refrigerator?" Kyle looked genuinely surprised. I didn't know how. The kettle whistled. I poured the water into my mug, dropped in a tea bag and leaned against the counter. "That's the problem, isn't it?" I said quietly. "None of you know how. Not just about cooking, about taking care of yourselves, about considering others, about saying please and thank you." Kyle's face hardened. "Is that why you disappeared? To teach us some kind of lesson?" "No," I said, meeting his gaze directly. "I disappeared because I needed to remember. That I'm a person, not a service." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at me. "That's Megan and Zach. They're on their way over. They want to talk to you." Of course they did. The Queen had abandoned her post, and the kingdom was in disarray. "I'll be here," I said, taking my tea to the living room, "but I'm not cleaning this kitchen." 20 minutes later, all 3 of my children stood before me, a unified front of indignation. Megan had her arms crossed. Zachary couldn't quite meet my eyes. Kyle leaned against the doorframe, trying to appear casual but clearly tense. "You embarrassed us," Megan started. "We had people over. Important people. My boss was there." "You left without saying anything," Zachary added, his voice softer. "We were worried." "You ruined my birthday," Kyle finished. I took a slow sip of my now lukewarm tea. "Is that all?" Megan's eyebrows shot up. "All? Mom, what's gotten into you? This isn't like you at all." "That's exactly what your father said," I replied, setting my mug down. "And he's right. This isn't like the me you've come to expect. The me who says yes to everything, the me who never complains, the me who exists only to serve your needs." "That's not fair," Zachary protested weakly. "Isn't it?" I stood up, suddenly energized by a surge of long-suppressed truth. "When was the last time any of you asked how I was doing? When was the last time you offered to help without me asking? When was the last time you thought of me as a person with needs and desires and limits?" Silence fell over the room, the kind of heavy silence that follows when an uncomfortable truth has been spoken aloud. "We appreciate everything you do," Megan finally said, her tone softened but still defensive. "Do you?" I asked. "Because appreciation looks like respect. It looks like consideration. It looks like not ordering me to cook for 15 people without even asking if I'm available." Kyle stepped forward. "You've always done these things. You've always taken care of us." "Yes," I said, "I have. And I made a mistake in never teaching you that I shouldn't have to do it all, that I shouldn't be expected to do it all." I looked at each of them in turn. These adults who had once been tiny beings I cradled in my arms, whose tears I had wiped, whose dreams I had nurtured. "I love you all more than anything in this world," I continued, my voice steady. "But love shouldn't be a one-way street. Love shouldn't mean I disappear so you can shine." Zachary, always the most sensitive of the 3, had tears in his eyes. "We didn't mean to make you feel invisible." "I know," I said gently, "but you did, and I let you. That stops now." Megan, practical to a fault, shifted uncomfortably. "So what happens now? You're just Not going to help anymore? I smiled at her directness. I'm going to help when I want to, when I can, when it brings me joy, not when I'm ordered to, not when I'm taken for granted, not when it costs me my sense of self. And what about family traditions? Holidays? Birthdays? Kyle asked, a hint of panic in his voice. Those can continue, I assured him, but they'll be different. They'll be shared responsibilities. They'll involve all of us contributing, not just me serving. They exchanged glances, clearly trying to process this seismic shift in our family dynamic. I think we should go, Megan finally said. We all need some time to think. I nodded. That sounds wise. As they filed out, Kyle lingered behind. I'm sorry, Mum, he said quietly. I didn't see what we were doing to you. His apology, though simple, struck a chord deep within me. It was a start. Thank you, Kyle, I replied. That means a lot. After they left, I stood in the middle of my living room, feeling both lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter from having finally spoken my truth, heavier with the responsibility of maintaining these new boundaries. The kitchen was still a disaster. For a moment, old habits nearly took over, the urge to clean it all up, to restore order, to make everything perfect for everyone else. Instead, I walked past it, went to my bedroom, and ran myself a bath. The mess could wait. It wasn't going anywhere, and neither was I. The fallout was dramatic. Tom was furious. He called me selfish, manipulative, unstable. They're adults, Donna, he barked over the phone. You can't just abandon them, because you're having some kind of midlife crisis. They're adults, I echoed back to him. Exactly. So why can't they cook their own meals? Plan their own parties? Clean up their own messes? Because that's what mothers do, he replied, as if stating an immutable law of the universe. No, Tom, I said calmly. That's what servants do, and I'm not a servant anymore. I hung up before he could respond. Megan was hurt and confused. She stopped by 3 days later ostensibly to check on me, but really to try and understand what had changed. I just don't get it, she said, perched on the edge of my couch like a visitor, not the daughter who used to sprawl across it with her homework. You've always been there for us. You've always done everything. That's the problem, I explained. I did everything, and you all got used to it. You started expecting it, demanding it. She fiddled with her wedding ring. We didn't demand. Kyle texted me orders for his birthday BBQ, I reminded her gently. Not a request, orders. He just assumed you'd want to do it, she defended. You always have before. Did he ask if I had plans? If I was free that day? If I wanted to host 15 people? Megan's silence was answer enough. Honey, I said, taking her hand, I want to be part of your lives. I want to help when I can, but I need you to see me as a person first and a mother second. She nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't realize we were hurting you. I know, I said, squeezing her hand, and that's partly my fault. I never spoke up. I never set boundaries. I let myself become invisible. She left that day with a lot to think about, and to my surprise she texted later to invite me to dinner at her house the following week, a dinner she would cook. Zachary didn't speak to me for a week. When he finally called, his voice was strained. Lindy says I need to apologize, he began awkwardly, referring to his fiancée. And what do you think? I asked. There was a long pause. I think I've been taking you for granted. I waited, letting him find his own words. When Dad left, he continued, you never missed a beat. You just kept going, kept taking care of everything. I guess I never stopped to think about what that cost you. It cost me a lot, I admitted, but that was my choice. I just need to make different choices now. Another pause. I get that, and I'm sorry, Mom. Really. Those words meant more than he could know. But the most surprising transformation was in Kyle. 1 week after the BBQ incident, he showed up at my door with groceries. I'm cooking dinner for you, he announced, brushing past me into the kitchen. Fair warning, it might be terrible, but I'm trying. I watched in amazement as my youngest child, the one who once called me from college to ask how to boil water for pasta, navigated my kitchen with determined if clumsy effort. The spaghetti was overcooked. The garlic bread was burnt on the edges. The salad was drowned in dressing. It was the most delicious meal I'd ever had. I've been watching YouTube tutorials, he admitted as we ate. Did you know there are like 1,000 videos just on how to chop an onion? I laughed. I did not know that. I've also been thinking a lot, he said, his expression growing serious. About what you said. About us treating you like a service, not a person. He pushed his pasta around his plate. "We took you for granted. We made you feel like an appliance, not a person. I'm sorry." His apology was sincere, heartfelt, and completely unexpected. "Thank you." "Kyle," I said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand, "that means everything to me." In the weeks that followed, my kids learned how to cook their own meals, plan their own events, and clean up after themselves. I didn't become distant. I became clear. I told them, "I'll show up for love, not labor. I'm your mother, not your maid." And slowly, our relationship shifted. They stopped expecting and started asking. They started sharing tasks. They started seeing me. Tom remained critical. "You've changed," he accused during one phone call. "And not for the better." "I've changed," I agreed. "But whether it's for better or worse depends on whose life we're talking about, yours or mine." That silenced him, at least temporarily. Luann, my loyal friend, was thrilled. "Look at you," she said over our regular coffee date. "You've got color in your cheeks again, you're sitting up straighter, you're present." I realized she was right. For too long, I'd been there, but not really there, physically present, but emotionally absent, consumed by the endless cycle of giving without receiving, doing without being. Now I was learning to be present in my own life, to take up space, to have needs and voice them, to say no without guilt and yes with joy. It wasn't always easy. Old habits threatened to resurface. There were days I felt the pull to fall back into familiar patterns, to be the woman who made everything easier for everyone else at her own expense. But I resisted, and with each small act of resistance I reclaimed a piece of myself. 3 months after what my children now referred to as the BBQ incident, Zachary's wedding day arrived. In the past I would have been up at dawn, coordinating with caterers, arranging flowers, steaming dresses, calming nerves, the invisible engine ensuring everyone else's perfect day. This time, I was simply the mother of the groom. I sat in the bridal suite with Lindy, Zachary's soon-to-be wife, watching as her sisters fussed over her veil. "Aren't you going to help?" her mother asked me, a hint of judgment in her tone. "I'm right where I need to be," I replied with a smile, meeting Lindy's eyes in the mirror. She smiled back, understanding. Lindy had been surprisingly supportive after the BBQ confrontation. "I've been trying to tell Zach for years that you do too much," she'd confessed to me over coffee one day. My mom was the same way, and it nearly broke her. Now, as I sat back and watched others handle the last-minute details, I felt a strange mix of liberation and loss. Part of me still wanted to jump in, to fix, to arrange, to serve, but the stronger part, the newly awakened part, knew better. The ceremony was beautiful. Zachary, handsome in his navy suit, looked at Lindy with such adoration it brought tears to my eyes. When the minister asked who gives this woman, her father's voice rang out clear and proud. When it came time for the mother-son dance, Zachary held me with a new respect in his eyes. "Thank you for everything, Mom," he whispered as we swayed to the music. "Not just today, but every day." "You're welcome, sweetheart," I replied, my heart full. After the dance, I found my way to a table near the back, content to observe the celebration unfolding around me. To my surprise, Kyle slid into the seat beside me, setting down 2 glasses of champagne. "Thought you might want some company," he said, pushing one glass toward me. "What about your date?" I asked, nodding toward the pretty brunette he'd brought. "She's fine," he shrugged. "Dancing with her cousin. I wanted to check on you." I raised an eyebrow. "Check on me?" "Yeah, make sure you're having a good time, that you don't need anything." I couldn't help but laugh. "Look at you, taking care of me for a change." He grinned, a little embarrassed. "I'm trying, Mom. We all are." And they were. In small ways and large, my children were showing me they'd heard my wake-up call. Megan had started hosting Sunday dinners at her house, insisting I bring nothing but myself. "You've cooked enough meals for a lifetime," she'd declared. "It's our turn now." Zachary had been calling regularly, not just when he needed something, but to check in, to share stories about work, to ask about my day. And Kyle, my youngest, had perhaps changed the most. He'd shown up 2 weekends in a row to help with yard work. He'd fixed the leaky faucet in my bathroom. He'd even started sending me funny memes throughout the day, not earth-shattering, but a sign he was thinking of me. As the wedding reception continued around us, Kyle clinked his glass against mine. "To new beginnings," he toasted. "To new beginnings," I echoed, feeling the truth of those words deep in my bones. Later, as I was gathering my purse to leave, "Tom, approached. He'd been civil throughout the evening, keeping his distance. Now, slightly loosened by champagne, he swayed slightly as he stood before me. "You look good, Donna," he said, his eyes traveling over me in a way that once would have made my heart race. Now it barely registered. "Thank you, Tom. The kids say you've been different since the BBQ thing." I nodded, waiting. "They say you're happier, more yourself." He paused, searching my face. "I don't remember that version of you." "That's because she disappeared shortly after we got married," I replied, not unkindly. "But she's back now." He frowned, processing this. Was I that bad? As a husband? It was a complicated question, one that deserved more than a simple yes or no. But standing there in the fading echoes of our son's wedding reception wasn't the time for that conversation. "We both made choices, Tom," I said finally. "I chose to disappear into taking care of everyone else. You chose to let me." He nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. But I'm not looking backward anymore, only forward. As I drove home that night, the moonlight spilling across the highway, I felt a peace I hadn't known in decades. Not the peace of exhaustion after serving others all day, but the peace of being aligned with my own truth. The house was quiet when I returned, but it no longer felt empty. It felt like mine, a space where I could breathe, think, be. I kicked off my heels, made myself a cup of tea, and sat on my back porch looking at the stars. The same grill that had stood cold and unused on the morning of my escape now seemed like a monument to my awakening. My phone pinged with a text from Zachary. "Best day ever. Love you, Mom." I smiled and typed back, "Love you too. Always." And in that moment, I knew that walking away hadn't meant losing my children. It had meant finding myself, and in doing so, creating space for a more authentic relationship with them. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my doorbell. When I opened the door, still in my robe, I found all three of my children standing there with bags of groceries. "What's all this?" I asked, stepping back to let them in. "Brunch," Megan announced. "Our treat." "We figured you might be tired after the wedding," Zachary explained. "And we wanted to thank you," Kyle added, "for everything." As they bustled around my kitchen, Megan directing operations, Zachary chopping fruits, Kyle attempting to flip pancakes without disaster, I sat at the counter, watching them with wonder and gratitude. They weren't perfect. The pancakes were oddly shaped. The coffee was too strong. Zachary cut his finger and needed a bandage, but they were trying, and in their effort, I saw the greatest gift of all. They were seeing me, not as a service, not as a given, but as a person deserving of care and consideration. "Toast," Kyle announced, raising his orange juice. "To Mom, who taught us that sometimes the best way to love someone is to let them be themselves." We clinked glasses, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "I love you all," I said simply. "We love you too," they chorused back. And, this time their love didn't feel like a weight. It felt like a gift, freely given and gratefully received. "I think you should do it," Luann said, setting down her coffee mug with emphasis. We were sitting at our favorite cafe, the morning sun streaming through the windows, turning her silver hair to platinum. "I don't know," I hedged, twisting my napkin. "It's been years since I've done anything like that." "Exactly why you should," she insisted. "Donna, you've spent the last 25 years taking care of everyone but yourself. It's time." The "it" in question was a culinary course at the local community college. Not the basic cooking classes I could teach in my sleep, but a specialized course in artisanal bread making, something I'd always been fascinated by but never had time to pursue. What would I even do with that skill, I asked, though the question was more for myself than for Luann. She fixed me with a look that said she wasn't buying my excuses. "Does it matter? Maybe you'll bake amazing bread just for yourself. Maybe you'll start a small business. Maybe you'll teach others. The point is, it's something for you." She was right, of course. In the 4 months since I'd walked away from the BBQ, I'd been relearning how to prioritize myself. I'd started small, a book club, daily walks, saying no to things that drained me. But taking an actual course, investing time and money in a skill purely for my own enjoyment, that felt like a bigger step. "Registration closes tomorrow," Luann reminded me, sliding the course brochure across the table. "Just think about it." I did think about it, all day, and that night, sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop open to the registration page, I took a deep breath and clicked enroll. The first day of class was terrifying and exhilarating. The classroom kitchen was industrial and intimidating. The other students, mostly younger, many with culinary backgrounds, seemed to know exactly what they were doing. "First time?" asked the woman next to me, noting my nervous glance around the room. "That obvious, huh?" I admitted with a small laugh. "I'm Eliza," she said, extending a flour-dusted hand. "And trust me, we're all beginners at something." Chef Marcus, our instructor, was both demanding and encouraging. He moved around the room with practiced ease, correcting techniques, offering advice, occasionally muttering in French when someone made a particularly egregious error. "The bread," he announced in his lilting accent. "It tells you what it needs. You must listen with your hands, not just your ears." I liked that idea. Listening with my hands. It reminded me that there was wisdom in my body, not just in my mind. Wisdom earned through years of nurturing, cooking, cleaning, caring. But now that wisdom was being redirected toward creation, not service, to my surprise, I had a knack for bread making. Chef Marcus paused by my station during our third class, eyeing my perfectly proofed sourdough with approval. "You have patient hands, Donna," he said. "This is good. Bread needs patience." Patience I had in abundance. What I was still working on was confidence. That Saturday, I invited my children over for dinner, not to serve them, but to share with them, to show them what I'd been learning. "You made this?" Megan asked, breaking off a piece of olive rosemary bread, her eyes widening as the aroma filled the room. "I did," I confirmed, unable to keep the pride from my voice. "It's amazing, Mom," Zachary said through a mouthful. "Better than anything at that fancy bakery." "By your place," Kyle added, reaching for a second piece. Their approval was sweet, but what mattered more was how I felt. Standing in my kitchen, watching them enjoy something I'd created not out of obligation but out of joy, it filled a space inside me I hadn't realized was empty. After dinner, as we lingered around the table, Megan asked, "So what's next? After the bread course ends?" "I'm not." "Sure," I admitted. "Maybe pastry, maybe something completely different." "Whatever it is," Kyle said, "we've got your back." Those words, so simple yet so profound, warmed me more than they could know. The bread course led to pastry, which led to a weekend workshop on French cooking techniques. I was becoming a student again, learning and growing in ways I'd put aside for decades. But the biggest surprise came from Eliza, my classmate from the bread course. We'd stayed in touch, occasionally meeting for coffee to discuss recipes and techniques. "I'm thinking of opening a small bakery," she mentioned casually one day. "Nothing fancy, just a neighborhood place with good bread, good coffee, good company." I nodded, genuinely happy for her. "That sounds wonderful. I need a partner," she continued, watching me over the rim of her cup. "Someone with solid skills, someone who understands that bread is more than just flour and water. Someone like you." The offer caught me completely off guard. "Me? Eliza, I've only been doing this for a few months." "But you have a lifetime of feeding people," she pointed out. "And more importantly, you have the right spirit for it. You understand. That food is about nourishment, not just sustenance." I stammered something about needing to think about it, my mind racing with equal parts terror and excitement. That night, I called a family meeting, not to serve my children, but to seek their counsel. "A bakery," Megan repeated, her practical nature immediately calculating risks and rewards. "That's a big undertaking, Mom." "I know," I acknowledged. "It would mean investing some of my savings, working long hours, learning an entirely new business." "But you'd be amazing at it," Zachary insisted. "Your bread is incredible, and you've always been good with people." Kyle, ever the direct one, asked the key question, "Is it what you want?" I considered this, truly considered it, without thinking about anyone else's needs or expectations. "Yes," I said finally, surprised by the certainty in my voice. "I think it is." "Then do it," he said simply. "We'll help however we can." Megan offered to review the business plan. Zachary, with his marketing background, volunteered to help with branding and social media. Kyle promised manual labor for the renovation. As they brainstormed ideas for the bakery, their enthusiasm building, I sat back and watched them with a full heart. These were the same children who, less than a year ago, couldn't imagine me as anything but their personal caretaker. Now, they were championing my dreams, offering support without taking over. The shift was profound. When I called Eliza the next morning to accept her offer, my voice was steady with conviction. Let's do it, I told her. Let's create something wonderful together. To new beginnings, she replied, echoing Kyle's toast from Zachary's wedding. To new beginnings, I agreed, and fresh starts. 6 months later, Donna and Eliza's opened its doors on a quiet street corner in Temecula. The space was small but inviting. Exposed brick walls, warm wood counters, and the intoxicating aroma of fresh-baked bread filling every corner. Opening day dawned clear and bright. I'd been up since 3 a.m., my hands working dough, my mind calm despite the magnitude of the moment. There was something meditative about the rhythm of kneading, proofing, baking, a dance I'd come to love. Eliza arrived an hour later, bringing fresh flowers for the tables and a bottle of champagne for later. Nervous? She asked, tying her apron. Terrified, I admitted, but ready. By 6:30 a.m. everything was in place. Loaves of sourdough, baguettes, and olive rosemary bread lined the shelves. Pastries filled the glass case. Coffee brewed in large urns, its rich scent mingling with the yeasty warmth of fresh bread. At 7 a.m. I unlocked the door and flipped the sign to open, and then we waited. For 15 excruciating minutes, the bakery remained empty. Eliza and I exchanged nervous glances. Had we miscalculated? Would anyone come? Then the bell above the door jingled, and in walked Luann, beaming with pride. I wanted to be your first official customer, she announced, surveying the space with approval. Though I won't be the last, there's a line forming outside. She wasn't exaggerating. By 8 a.m. the bakery was bustling. Neighbors, curious locals, friends of friends, all coming to see what the new place was about and leaving with warm bread and satisfied smiles. Mid-morning, the bell jingled again, and I looked up to see Tom standing awkwardly by the door. We hadn't spoken since Zachary's wedding, and his presence caught me off guard. This is impressive, he said, approaching the counter. Really impressive. Donna. Thank you, I replied, genuinely touched by his appearance. What can I get you? Whatever you recommend, he said. I trust your judgment. I wrapped up a loaf of sourdough, still warm from the oven. On the house, I told him. First-time customer discount. He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in years. I never thought you'd do something like this, he admitted. Open. A business, I mean. Neither did I confessed. But here we are. As he turned to leave, he paused. I'm proud of you, Donna. I should have said that more when we were together. The compliment, long overdue but sincere, settled somewhere deep inside me. Thank you, Tom. The day continued in a whirlwind of customers, conversations, and constant baking. By closing time, our shelves were nearly empty. A good problem to have, Eliza assured me. As we cleaned up, my phone buzzed with messages from all 3 children. Megan, stopped by earlier, but it was packed. Grabbed a cinnamon roll. Life-changing. So proud of you, Mom. Zachary, Lindy and I are spreading the word to everyone we know. This place is going to be a hit. Kyle, sorry couldn't make it today. Had a work emergency. We'll be there tomorrow first thing. Save me something good. I showed the messages to Eliza, who grinned. You've got quite the support system. I do now, I agreed. It wasn't always this way. After closing, we popped the champagne, toasting to our first successful day. To listening to the bread, Eliza said, raising her glass. And to listening to ourselves, I added. The following weeks were a blur, of early mornings, tired feet, and the most profound satisfaction I'd ever known. The bakery quickly became a neighborhood fixture. We added lunch service. We hired 2 part-time employees. We even started a weekly bread-making class for beginners. One morning, as I shaped dough for the day's baguettes, I caught my reflection in the polished steel of the oven. The woman looking back at me was tired but radiant. Her hands moved with confident purpose. Her eyes were clear and focused. She stood straight, no longer bent by the weight of others' expectations. I barely recognized her, this new Donna. Yet she felt more familiar than the woman I'd been for decades, more authentic, more aligned with my true self. The bakery's success brought unexpected challenges, of course. There were days when the starter wouldn't cooperate, when customers were difficult, when equipment broke down at the worst possible moment. But unlike the challenges of my previous life, where I silently shouldered everyone else's burdens, these were challenges I'd chosen. Problems that belonged to me that I could solve on my own terms, and I wasn't alone. Eliza was a true partner, complementing my strengths and, supporting my weaknesses. My children pitched in when needed, but never assumed or demanded. Even Tom became a regular customer, sometimes lingering to chat, our relationship evolving into something like friendship. 3 months after opening, a food critic from San Diego visited the bakery. His review, published the following week, called our sourdough transcendent and our atmosphere a masterclass in genuine hospitality. The day the review came out, customers lined up around the block. We sold out of everything by noon. That night, exhausted but exhilarated, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine, contemplating how much had changed in a single year. From the woman who'd slipped away before sunrise, leaving a cold grill and a lifetime of servitude behind, to the business owner whose hands created something people lined up to experience. From the mother whose children took her for granted, to the woman whose family rallied around her dreams. From invisible to seen. The transformation wasn't just in how others viewed me, but in how I viewed myself. I'd reclaimed my right to exist as more than someone else's support system. I'd remembered that my worth wasn't measured in meals served or messes cleaned, but in the fullness with which I lived my own life. And perhaps most importantly, I'd discovered that setting boundaries didn't mean losing love. It meant creating space for a more authentic kind of connection. As the stars appeared overhead, I made a silent toast to that morning at the bus station, to the woman who had been brave enough to walk away so that she could finally walk toward herself. 1 year to the day after the BBQ incident, as it had come to be known in family lore, I found myself standing in my backyard, looking at the same grill that had once symbolized my servitude. It was Kyle's birthday again, but this time everything was different. I'd offered to host a small family dinner, not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire, to celebrate my son. The key difference, I wasn't doing it alone. Megan arrived early, bringing appetizers she'd prepared herself. Zachary and Lindy came with wine and dessert. Kyle, the birthday boy, insisted on handling the grill. "Mum, sit down," he ordered, guiding me to a chair on the patio. "This is my territory now." I watched with amusement and pride as he confidently seasoned steaks, adjusted the heat, and timed the cooking with meticulous attention. When had my youngest learned such skills? In the month since I'd reclaimed my life, my children had developed abilities I'd never given them the chance to discover. "Need any help?" I asked, more out of habit than necessity. "Nope," Kyle replied cheerfully, "but I might need your expert opinion on whether these are medium rare." Enough! As the evening unfolded, I marveled at how naturally we'd fallen into this new dynamic. Conversation flowed easily. Everyone pitched in without being asked. No one expected me to handle everything. After dinner, as we lingered around the table with coffee and the chocolate cake Lindy had baked, Kyle cleared his throat. "So I have an announcement," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "I've been offered a job in San Francisco. It's a great opportunity, but it means moving. A year ago, this news would have devastated me. My youngest, moving hours away. Who would check his oil and remind him to file his taxes and bring him soup when he got sick? But now I felt only a gentle pang of anticipated missing him, overshadowed by genuine happiness for his opportunity. "That's wonderful, Kyle," I said sincerely. "When do you start?" "Next month," he replied, visibly relieved by my reaction. "And there's more. I'm seeing someone special. Her name is Abigail, and she's already in San Francisco. That's partly why I applied for the job." "Well, we'll have to meet her soon," I said, squeezing his hand. "Actually," he grinned, "she's coming down next weekend. I was hoping we could all have dinner at the bakery. I really want her to try your bread." The pride in his voice, the way he wanted to share my accomplishment with someone important to him, it touched me deeply. Later, as my children helped clean up, another new development. Megan pulled me aside. "I've been meaning to tell you something," she said quietly. "I started therapy a few months ago." "Oh?" I responded, careful not to sound judgmental or worried. "Yeah, after everything that happened with you, I started thinking about patterns, about how I treat people, about why I expect so much from others and so little from myself." She took a deep breath. "I realized I was becoming Dad in some ways, and I didn't like it." The confession clearly cost her something. Megan, always so composed, so sure of herself, was admitting vulnerability. "I'm proud of you," I told her, meaning every word. "It takes courage to look at yourself that honestly. I learned it from you. she replied, her eyes shining. Watching you change everything, stand up for yourself, start fresh, it inspired me. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat on my back porch, wrapped in a light blanket against the evening chill. The stars seemed particularly bright, as if celebrating with me. My phone buzzed with a text from Eliza. Just finished tomorrow's prep. New cranberry walnut recipe looks promising. Sleep well, partner. Partner. Such a simple word, but it represented so much. Equal footing, mutual respect, shared purpose. As I scrolled through my messages, I noticed one from Luann. Saw the line. At the bakery today. You're a local sensation, my friend. So proud of your journey. My journey. From invisible servant to visible creator. From saying yes to everything to saying yes only to what fulfilled me. From being needed to being valued. It hadn't been easy. There had been stumbles along the way, moments when I'd slipped back into old patterns, times when my children had forgotten the new boundaries, days when I'd questioned whether I'd done the right thing. But sitting there under the vast California sky, I knew with absolute certainty that walking away that morning had been the bravest, truest act of my life. Today, when we gather, I bring a dish, one, sometimes dessert, sometimes a salad, never the entire meal. Sometimes I don't go at all, and that's okay, because family isn't about who does the most work. It's about mutual respect, real connection, and showing up with each other, not for each other. And now, I finally sit at the table I spent decades preparing, not as the one serving, but as someone who is seen, heard, and valued. The bakery continues to thrive. We're even talking about opening a second location. My hands, once worn from cleaning other people's houses, now create something I'm proud to call my own. My children, once blind to my personhood, now see me clearly, not just as their mother, but as Donna, a woman with dreams, boundaries, and a life beyond serving them. And I see myself clearly too, no longer defined by what I do for others, but by who I am and what brings me joy. As the moon rose higher, casting silver light across the yard, I thought about that cold grill from a year ago, about the woman who had finally had enough, about the courage it took to walk away. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is leave, not out of anger or revenge, but out of self-respect and love, for ourselves, and ultimately for those we're leaving behind. Because being needed isn't the same as being loved. I finally learned the difference, and I never lit that grill again. Instead, I lit something far more powerful, my own path forward, illuminated by the flame of self-worth that once ignited can never truly be extinguished. And that light continues to guide me one day, one loaf, one authentic choice at a time.